Find a comfortable position, somewhere you can truly rest, and let your body sink into the support beneath you. Close your eyes and take a long, slow breath in, feeling the air fill your chest, and then a gentle, steady exhale, letting go of the day's weight. There is nowhere else you need to be right now. Nothing else you need to solve. There is only this moment, and the quiet rhythm of a story unfolding in the velvet dark. Tonight, we drift into a tale that feels less like history and more like a dream, a shimmering mirage of wealth and ambition that stretched across the globe. It is the story of the 1MDB scandal, involving a man named Jho Low. But we will not approach this with the harsh glare of news headlines or the urgency of a courtroom. Instead, we will float through the atmosphere of this story, observing the glittering lights, the deep, dark waters, and the silence of vast, empty rooms filled with treasures. Imagine, if you will, the sensation of humidity, the warm, heavy air of the tropics. We begin in Penang, an island off the coast of Malaysia. It is a place where the jungle meets the sea, where the scent of rain on hot pavement mixes with the salt of the ocean. Here, the days move slowly. The sun beats down on colonial buildings and modern high-rises alike, painting everything in a wash of bright, white light. It was here, in this lush, vibrant world, that a boy named Low Take Jho was born. He was not born into royalty, nor into the highest echelons of ancient power, but into comfort. It is interesting to consider how a calm beginning can lead to such a storm, how a quiet life seeks to become a loud one. Picture a young man observing the world with quiet, watchful eyes. He grew up surrounded by the ebb and flow of commerce, the way ships moved through the Strait of Malacca, carrying goods, carrying fortunes, moving silently across the horizon. There is a certain romance to trade, to the idea that value can be moved from one place to another, changing hands, changing lives. As he grew, his path moved away from the tropical heat toward the grey, stone solidity of England. Imagine the contrast, the cool, crisp air of London, the ancient, hallowed halls of the Harrow School. Here, the atmosphere is different. It smells of old paper, polished wood, and rain against leaded glass windows. At Harrow, and later at the Wharton School in Pennsylvania, the world was a series of closed doors and velvet ropes. It was a world of networks, of hushed conversations in leather armchairs. Jho Low, the young man from Penang, learned to navigate these spaces. He was soft-spoken, eager to please, a figure who knew that the key to entering these rooms was not just money, but the illusion of belonging. Visualize the social gatherings of the global elite. The clinking of crystal flutes, the murmur of voices discussing millions as if they were pennies, the soft glow of chandeliers reflecting off marble floors. Jho Low moved through these spaces like a shadow, always present, always smiling, always ready to make a connection. He understood a fundamental truth about human nature, that everyone desires to be close to the light. He befriended the children of royalty, the heirs to great fortunes from the Middle East. Imagine the desert nights, the vast, starry sky over the dunes, and the ultra-modern skylines of cities rising from the sand. Jho Low was there, weaving himself into the fabric of their lives. He became a bridge, a conduit between the resource-rich sands of the Middle East and the ambitious markets of Southeast Asia. There is a hypnotic quality to extreme wealth, a way it distorts reality, making the impossible seem within reach. By the time he returned to Malaysia, the stage was set. The year was 2009. The world was recovering from a financial crisis, but in the boardrooms of Kuala Lumpur, there was only optimism. Imagine the skyline of Kuala Lumpur at night, the Petronas Towers glowing like twin jewels against the darkness, piercing the sky with their steel and glass. It is a city of ambition, a city that wants to be seen. Here, the concept of the Sovereign Wealth Fund was born. It was to be called 1MDB, One Malaysia Development Berhad. The name itself sounds official, sturdy, permanent. It was designed to be a national treasure, a fund that would invest in green energy, in tourism, in infrastructure, to lift the country into a new era of prosperity. The intention was written on paper, signed with expensive pens in quiet rooms. Billions of dollars were raised. Bonds were issued. The machinery of global finance began to turn, slowly at first, then with gathering momentum. But let us pause and look at the water. Water is a recurring theme in this story. Money, like water, flows. It takes the path of least resistance. It can be deep and still, or it can be turbulent. In the story of Jho Low, the money flowed like a great underground river, unseen by the public eye, moving through secret channels, through offshore accounts in places where the sun always shines and the questions are rarely asked. Imagine the Seychelles or the Cayman Islands. Turquoise waters, white sand that feels like powder between your toes, and the silence of a bank vault. The money from 1MDB began to move, not into power plants or bridges, but into a labyrinth of shell companies. Jho Low was the architect of this flow. He was the magician in the background. He held no official position in 1MDB. He was never on the payroll, yet he was everywhere. He was the whisper in the ear of the Prime Minister. He was the hand guiding the pen. As the billions flowed, the lifestyle began to shift. We move now from the boardrooms to the world of pure, unadulterated fantasy. Imagine a yacht, not just a boat, but a floating palace. The Equanimity. The name means calmness, composure, mental stability. A strictly ironic name, given the chaos of its origins. Visualize this vessel, 300 feet of sleek white metal floating on the azure sea. It is quiet on board. The engines are a distant hum. The decks are lined with teak, smooth and warm underfoot. There is a swimming pool, a cinema, a spa. It is a private world, detached from the laws of the land. Jho Low would stand on the deck of such a vessel, looking out at the horizon, a glass of rare champagne in his hand. The bubbles rising in the glass, golden and effervescent, much like his rise in society. He was becoming a whale, a term used in casinos for the biggest spenders. And oh, the casinos. Picture the plush, carpeted floors of Las Vegas, the lack of clocks, the lack of windows, a place where time stands still. Jho Low was a legend here. He would sit at the baccarat tables, surrounded by friends, by celebrities, by the most beautiful people in the world. Chips worth millions were pushed across the felt, changing hands with the turn of a card. There was no sense of loss, only the thrill of the game. The money seemed endless, a spring that would never run dry. He bought art, masterpieces by Basquiat and Monet. Imagine a painting hanging on the wall of a penthouse in New York City. The colors vibrant, the brushstrokes full of history. He bought these not just for their beauty, but for what they represented. They were tokens of entry, tickets to a club that had previously been closed to him. He bought real estate, a penthouse in the Time Warner Center, overlooking Central Park. Imagine standing at that window, looking down at the trees, the winding paths, the city of New York spread out like a grid of lights below you. From that height, everything looks small. The people are just specks. The traffic is just a river of red and white lights. From that height, you feel untouchable. It is a strange thing to be surrounded by so much, and yet to be constantly chasing more. One wonders if there was ever a moment of quiet satisfaction, or if the silence was too loud to bear. The parties he threw were legendary. They were not just gatherings, they were spectacles. Fireworks illuminating the night sky over private islands, fleets of limousines, rivers of cristal champagne. He surrounded himself with the icons of Hollywood, actors, musicians, models. He funded movies, becoming a producer of dreams in the most literal sense. He was the great Gatsby of the modern age, a mystery man with pockets full of gold, throwing parties for people who didn't really know him, all in an effort to be seen, to be accepted, to be loved. But beneath the music, beneath the laughter and the clinking glasses, the foundation was shifting. The money, the billions of dollars, belonged to the people of Malaysia. It was meant for development, for the future. Instead, it was evaporating into the night air of Las Vegas, sinking into the plush upholstery of private jets, dissolving into the ocean spray off the coast of the Mediterranean. As we linger in this opening chapter, let us hold on to this image of the Mirage, the shimmering heat, the golden light, the beautiful, expensive surface of things. It was a time of excess, a time of blindness. The world watched, dazzled by the display, not asking where the fuel for this fire came from. Everything was smooth, everything was soft, everything was flowing. The yacht drifted on the calm sea. The jet cruised above the clouds in the eternal sunshine of the stratosphere. And Jho Low, the boy from Penang, sat in the center of it all, spinning a web of gold, believing, perhaps, that the sun would never set. But the night, as it always does, was waiting patiently at the edge of the sky. And so, as the night waited, the machinery of this great illusion began to turn, quietly, almost inaudibly, beneath the surface of the world. It was a machine made not of gears and pistons, but of digital signals, of signatures scrawled on heavy paper in quiet, air-conditioned rooms, of whispers exchanged in the private corners of high-ceilinged banking halls. Imagine, if you will, the flow of a great river. But this was not a river of water. It was a river of numbers, a river of capital, diverted from its natural course. It was meant to irrigate the land, to build power plants, to educate children, to lift a nation. But instead, hidden by the complexity of the global financial system, The river was dammed and redirected. It flowed through channels that were invisible to the naked eye, winding through the Seychelles, through the British Virgin Islands, through the Swiss Alps. There were names given to these channels, names that sounded optimistic, names that sounded solid. Good Star, a name that evokes a guiding light in the darkness. But it was a star that shone only for one man. Hundreds of millions of dollars, moving in the blink of an eye, crossing oceans without ever touching the waves. It is almost hypnotic to think of the silence of these transactions. A button is pressed in Kuala Lumpur or in Abu Dhabi, and in an instant, the wealth of a nation reappears in a private account in Zurich, sitting there, still and potent, waiting to be transformed into pleasure. And transform it, he did. The money did not stay as abstract numbers. It materialized into the physical world, solidifying into objects of rare and breathtaking beauty. Let us walk through this gallery of acquisitions, moving slowly, observing the textures of this new reality. He bought history, and he bought silence. In the hushed, hallowed halls of the great auction houses in New York, where the air smells of old varnish and money, Jho Low raised his paddle. He purchased a painting by Jean-Michel Basquiat, a canvas alive with frantic energy, with color, with pain. He bought a Monet, a scene of water lilies, calm and reflective. He bought a Van Gogh, pen and ink, a drawing of a simple house in Provence. These masterpieces, created by souls who often knew only struggle, were now swept up into the orbit of this immense, unearned wealth. They were taken from the public eye and placed into the climate-controlled darkness of a storage facility in Geneva, or hung on the walls of a penthouse that touched the clouds. Think of that penthouse for a moment. High above Manhattan, in the Time Warner Center. The city below is a grid of lights, a galaxy of millions of lives, striving, working, dreaming. But up here, behind the floor-to-ceiling glass, there is only the quiet hum of luxury. The furniture is upholstered in silk. The floors are made of rare marble, cool to the touch. From this height, the world looks small, manageable. It looks like a board game, where the pieces can be moved by the hand of anyone bold enough to pick them up. But the ambition went beyond art and beyond real estate. It reached for the very fabric of dreams itself. It reached for Hollywood. There is a profound and gentle irony in what happened next. A story within a story. Jho Low, the man who was orchestrating a heist of unimaginable proportions, decided to fund a movie about a man who orchestrated a heist of unimaginable philosophers. He poured millions into the production of The Wolf of Wall Street. Picture the set of that film, the bright lights, the cameras, the actors pretending to be wealthy, pretending to be reckless. And watching from the shadows, standing behind the director, was the man who was living that reality. The line between the performance and the truth began to blur. The parties thrown to promote the film, in Cannes, in Las Vegas, were more extravagant than the scenes in the movie itself. It was a hall of mirrors. The world celebrated the film. Audiences applauded the depiction of excess. Critics praised the storytelling, all while the real story, the true narrative of the 1MDB scandal, was unfolding in real time beneath their feet. The money used to pay the actors, to build the sets, to cater the lunches, was the people's money. But in the golden glow of the Hollywood sunset, no one looked too closely at the source. It was just magic. It is strange, isn't it? How easily we accept the surface of things. If the car is shiny, if the suit is tailored, if the champagne is cold, we assume there is substance beneath. We assume there is a foundation. The foundation here was built on relationships. It wasn't just Jho Low. It was a network. There were bankers, men in sharp suits from Goldman Sachs, who saw the flow of money and opened the gates wider. They facilitated the bond deals, the complex financial instruments that raised the billions. They, too, were caught in the spell. The fees were astronomical. The bonuses were life-changing. In the quiet boardrooms, hands were shaken. Documents were signed with heavy, expensive pens. The atmosphere was professional, polite, civilized. There was no violence, no broken glass, only the quiet rustle of paper and the digital ping of a transfer confirmation. And amidst it all, floating on the turquoise waters of the world, was the yacht, the Equanimity. The word means calmness, composure, mental stability, especially in difficult situations. A poetic name for a vessel built on turbulence. 300 feet of sleek, white steel. It had a swimming pool, a cinema, a spa, a helicopter pad. It was a floating island, a sovereign state of one. Imagine standing on the deck of the Equanimity at sunset. The engine is a low, comforting thrum, barely a vibration beneath your feet. The ocean stretches out in every direction, endless and indifferent. On this boat, time did not exist. There were no deadlines. There were no consequences. Servants appeared with trays of fresh fruit and iced towels before you even knew you wanted them. The world of laws, of taxes, of questions was far away, beyond the horizon. Here, there was only the blue sky, the blue water, and the golden cage of comfort. Jho Low would host parties here, surrounded by celebrities, models, the beautiful people of the world. They would dance on the teak decks, under the starlight, drifting on a sea of stolen fortune. This was the peak, the zenith. The sun was high in the sky, and the shadows were short. It seemed as though the party would never end. The money seemed infinite. When one account ran low, another bond was issued, another loan was secured, another shell company was formed. It was a perpetual motion machine of debt and deceit, spinning smoothly, oiled by greed and indifference. But, in the distance, if one listened very closely, there was a sound. Not a loud sound, not a siren, but a whisper, a ripple in the water. A journalist sitting in a small office, perhaps with a cup of tea that had gone cold, looking at a document. A blogger staring at a screen late at night, tracing the lines between the dots. The sheer scale of the spending had begun to attract attention. You cannot burn a fire that bright without creating smoke, and the smoke was beginning to drift. Questions began to be asked, quietly at first. A raised eyebrow in a regulatory meeting. A memo sent between government agencies. Where is this money coming from? Who is this man? The web of gold, so carefully spun, so intricate and beautiful, was fragile. It relied on belief. It relied on everyone agreeing to the illusion. But the nature of illusions is that they cannot sustain themselves against the weight of reality forever. The stone is real. The water is real. The mirage is not. As we drift toward the end of this chapter, imagine the atmosphere shifting slightly. The air grows a little heavier. The humidity rises. The eternal sunshine of the stratosphere begins to dim. Just a fraction. The yacht still floats on the calm sea. The champagne is still cold. The music is still playing, but the rhythm has changed. There is a tension in the bass line. Jho Low, the maestro of this symphony, perhaps felt it too. A tightening in the chest, a need to keep moving, to keep spinning, faster and faster, to keep the plates spinning in the air. The stillness of the private jet, the silence of the penthouse, began to feel less like peace and more like isolation. The money had bought everything, except the one thing that mattered most. It could not buy truth. And the truth, patient and relentless as the tide, was beginning to rise. We leave him here, suspended in this moment of perfect, fragile precariousness. The billionaire who wasn't. The producer of a reality that did not exist. Floating in the space between the crime and the consequence. Wrapped in the velvet embrace of a dream that was about to wake up. Rest here for a moment, in this luxury, in this silence, before the dawn breaks. And then, the light begins to shift. The dawn does break, not with a crash, but with a slow, inevitable graying of the horizon. It starts as a whisper, a rumor carried on the wind, crossing oceans and time zones. The seamless reality, that perfectly curated world of endless celebrations and flowing crystal, begins to show its seams. The curtain, heavy and velvet, starts to pull back, revealing the scaffolding underneath. The change is subtle at first. A phone call that goes unanswered. A bank transfer that hangs in the digital ether. Pending, 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 until it simply stops. The music, which had been playing for years, that deep, thumping rhythm of excess, begins to fade. It lowers in volume, decibel by decibel, until all that is left is the sound of the wind and the distant rolling of the sea. The house of cards, built with such intricate care, built with billions of dollars and 1,000 lies, shudders in the breeze. It does not collapse all at once. It is a slow-motion dismantling, a graceful surrender to gravity. The investigations begin, not with sirens, but with the quiet scratching of pens on paper, the soft clicking of keyboards in government offices, the turning of pages in quiet rooms. The truth is a heavy thing, and it anchors the floating dream back down to the earth. Imagine the stillness of the properties now. The penthouse in New York, once alive with the laughter of the elite, once vibrating with the energy of the city below, now stands empty. The dust motes dance in the shafts of sunlight that pierce the floor-to-ceiling windows. The furniture, draped in white sheets, looks like ghosts in the dim light. The view remains, that spectacular panoramic view of Central Park, the green lungs of the city breathing in and out. But there is no one there to see it. The silence is profound, a library silence, a museum silence. The air is cool and still, waiting for a master who will never return. And the art, those masterpieces bought with borrowed fortunes, the Basquiat, the Monet, the Van Gogh. They are taken down from the walls, handled with gloved hands, wrapped in protective layers, and moved into the dark. They return to the quiet of storage, safe, dormant. They have seen centuries of human folly. They have passed through many hands, and this was just another brief chapter in their long, silent lives. They do not judge. They simply exist, resting in the cool dark, waiting for the next turn of the wheel. The yacht, the equanimity, that floating palace of tranquility. It sits docked in a harbor, its engines cold. The crew has departed. The helipad is empty. The water laps gently against the hull. Slap, slap, slap. A rhythmic reminder of the ocean's indifference. It is no longer a symbol of power. It is just a vessel, steel and glass and wood, floating on the tide. The government seizes it, renames it, sells it. The name changes, the owner changes, but the sea remains the same. The horizon is just as far away as it ever was. It is a strange thing to consider how quickly a kingdom can evaporate. One moment, you are the center of the universe, the sun around which everything orbits, and the next, you are smoke. Jho Low, the man who spun the globe on his finger, retreats. He moves from the spotlight into the shadows. He becomes a ghost story, a sighting here, a rumor there. Macau, Shanghai, the vast unknown corners of the world. He slips through the nets, sliding into the anonymity that money can still buy, at least for a while. But the nature of his life has changed. The expansion has turned into contraction. The freedom has turned into confinement. There is a different kind of quiet now. Not the quiet of a private island, but the quiet of hiding. Looking over one's shoulder, watching the news from a distance. The world moves on without him. The parties continue, but the host is forgotten. The celebrities find new patrons. The banks find new accounts. The waters of the global economy close over the disruption, smoothing out the ripples until the surface is glass once again. The scandal, as loud as it was, eventually becomes history. It becomes text in a book, a documentary on a screen, a cautionary tale told in low voices. The billions of dollars, the extravagant gifts, the sheer scale of the illusion. It all softens with time. It becomes abstract. And what remains? Only the feeling of the lesson, the ancient truth that nothing built on sand can stand against the tide, that the higher you build the tower, the more it sways in the wind, that peace, true peace, cannot be purchased. It cannot be transferred via wire. It cannot be poured from a bottle. Let us step back now, away from the noise, away from the glitter. Let us float upwards, above the skyscrapers, above the yachts, above the tangled webs of finance and ambition. From this height, everything looks peaceful. The world is just a blue and green marble, spinning slowly in the velvet darkness of space. The drama of Jho Low, the 1MDB scandal, the rise and the fall. It is all just a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. It is a story that has been told, and now the book is closing. The cover is shut. The pages are still. You are far away from it all. You are safe in your own space, in your own time. The ambition of others cannot touch you here. The hunger for more, the need to be seen, the desperate race for approval. You can let all of that go. You do not need $1 billion to feel the comfort of your bed. You do not need a super yacht to feel the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Inhale, slowly, deeply, filling your chest with calm, clean air. Exhale, releasing the tension, letting go of the need to control, letting go of the need to acquire. Just be here, in this simplicity. The richness of this moment is enough. The warmth of your blankets, the softness of your pillow, the heavy, pleasant weight of your own body sinking down, down into relaxation. The lights of the city have gone out. The stage is dark. The actors have gone home. There is only the silence of the theater, vast and comforting. Let the story fade. Let the names dissolve. Let the numbers vanish. They are just echoes now, fading into the night. You are drifting on a calm sea, under a sky full of stars. No engines, no destination, just drifting. The water is warm. The air is still. You are completely at peace. The world turns, slowly, steadily. Everything is in its right place. Justice, balance, truth. They have their own gravity. They eventually return, just as the sun eventually rises. You don't need to worry about it. You can rest. Sleep is the ultimate luxury, and it is yours, right now, for free. Drifting deeper and deeper. The narrative ends here. The silence begins. Good night.